Hello everyone, welcome to Homemakers Radio. If you're new here, please click on the link which I have provided in the description box and go to the post so that you can see the photographs and maybe an outline if I have time. And this is designed for you to listen to as you go for a walk or as you work around the home. And homemaking can be very isolating, and a lot of the chores are very tedious if you're really conscientiously trying to keep up with it, trying to keep everything nice. And so I remembered the olden days when we turned on the radio and we listened to some program while we were washing the dishes, which was a long, arduous job, especially in a large family. And so today I am going to educate you. And the reason for that is that I have noticed that YouTube is investigating these people who click off education as to the subject of their channels and find out it's not a class or it's not about education, or they particularly look at decorators and interior designers and things like that, and or people that are just showing pretty scenes of their home, and there are only a few things to choose from when you click off what the subject is of your channel. And so we always go to education because they don't have homemaking there and they don't have homeschooling or anything like that, so we just click on education. But they've been really being strict about it, and some people are being demonetized, although I'm not monetized. I only accept donations, but I want to be careful to be an educator and to make sure that it's the truth when I say it's education. So today I'm going to educate you a little bit. And to start out with, if you're trying to educate at home your children or yourself, the first thing I would do, most people, when they decide to homeschool their children, will order a bunch of books, and that's nice. But I would say if you are going to order first, start out with a book on health. I mean, good natural health, and a book on manners. And if you can sometimes find children's books on health and manners in Christian stores online. And if you can't find that, then you can do what I do and go to an old manners book and have a lot of fun with it and make it delightful. And then health is so important. I learned this when I first started out, was health is the most important thing in education. If you're going to educate anybody, they've got to have clarity. They have got to have physical fitness. And if they don't have good health, they have poor digestion, poor elimination. They're foggy in their thinking. They're tired. You're going to have to figure out how to get that solved. And so in yourself, start out with health, then manners, then humor. And these three things set you up very nicely because they make you fit and mentally, physically. And then also you're learning scripture and spiritual values. And you can get a lot of material on these things. Just make sure it's sound and doesn't have a particular slant to it that might take you off on a tangent somewhere. So these are the three most important things: the health, physical health, and then the mental stability, mental health, and manners. Manners are really important. And for example, I can tell you how to use manners while you're taking care of your health. For instance, you're going into the bathroom, brushing your teeth, cleaning yourself up. You leave the sink clean and shiny for the next person. That's courtesy. And we will be talking about courtesy in our lesson today. And so you can say that you have been homeschooled or that you are being homeschooled, no matter how old you are, because I'm going to try to use what I have here and what I've learned and just give it to you. So it's very important that you have a vacation from the world's narrative. So we're going to have an hour of detox today from the world. I might laugh at it a little bit. I might bring it up a little bit, but it would be nice every day if you would take an hour detox from the world's narrative, from thinking about what the world is up to. They're not going to quit. They're just going to get worse. And one of the reasons I don't have the same level of anxiety over it is because I have been through a lot of this. Back in the 1980s, late 1970s, when we first started homeschooling, we saw with alarm the reaction people had to people who were homeschooling. They were vicious. They retaliated, and they were militant against us in a way, and in some ways made us very unwelcome in churches. Even if you went out to a restaurant and someone knew you were all homeschooling, they weren't going to be very nice to you. So, I've been through all of this, and I know what they're up to. But I know that we will win. And the more you win, the harder people press down, the harder they restrict you because they're afraid of you. The more you're winning, the more you can tell how you're doing. How you're doing in a war is how fierce the enemy is retaliating. And you know that they're scared when they lash out. And so now I want to talk to you about being home and having a detox hour here. And tell yourself to have a detox hour once a day where everyone goes, lets their minds lie fallow, and does not think about things too terrorizing or too deeply. And one of the things that I like to do, it's one of my guilty pastimes. My daughter is a Stampin' Up, I guess you would say, representative and practitioner. She's had rubber stamps since she was very young, and there's these new acrylic stamps that don't take up so much room, and you put them on a little block, and they're just really nice. And so she has... on my sidebar, I'll tell you who she is. At the top, there is a link to Sagebrush Stampers, and that's where you can go and see her make a card or make some stationery. And then she tells you where you can get this, and I don't know if where you can get this catalog. I think you just go to stampinup.com, and it's a catalog, and I just spend time looking at it. I don't want to start this because I've still got a couple areas I need to clean up. I want to go through all of my sewing and all the threads and zippers and buttons and get everything nice before I start collecting something. But just show you how colorful it is. And so I just take the catalog and I just go through it and look at it. And I don't mind watching somebody else make something on YouTube. I just don't want to start getting all the materials around right now. And it had a couple of things that were very, I don't know what it was, but it was something that, I don't know why it was, but here's a page, and it's called You're a Peach. And it's got the peach theme, and look at those jar covers, aren't those cute? And then cards and probably stationery, and you just order the pack there. But I don't order them, but it's just one of my guilty pleasures as I sit here and look at this magazine and this catalog, and I've been looking at it for a long, long time. And I want to be really supportive of my daughter and granddaughters, so I will sometimes order something and let them have it, because then they can make me a card. So that way, they hand me the catalog. I don't say, oh, I don't want to start collecting this stuff. You just order it and have it sent to them. And then they can make you the cards that you need to give to your ladies' friends or to the birthdays. And so I get to choose the cutout, the stamps, and the punches. And it's also a catalog that works well with, oh look, this is pretty, isn't it? It's also a catalog that works well with, they have the Cricut machines, or they call it Cricut machines. And so that's one of the things I like to, a couple hours a day, detox, just totally detox your mind from all this stuff and do something that's really on purpose, pleasurable, delightful, and non-harmful, but very wholesome. So that's what I do. Maybe you have something else, but everybody's different. You don't all have to do the same thing. So we will continue here, and I will be reading you some things. And I think also you should do what In the book Our Mutual Friend, uh, where Lizzie was married to the lawyer, and someone asked her friend, "How's your friend Lizzie doing?" She had gone to see her, and she said, "She's suffering from unbearable happiness." So, for about an hour a day or two, you should suffer from unbearable happiness. Get something out that you like to do, or just go sit on your swing with a glass of lemonade and sit there and be happy and forget about everything. Because the world isn't going to settle down, they're just going to wax worse and worse. And when they find out that you're happy and that you like your tea kettles and your teacups, they're just going to put a tax on it and make you miserable. If you like to sew, they're going to take away your thread. They're going to make the thread contraband. They're going to make things difficult. But I want to show you something today about the tea kettles. Now, I had shown you this. It's automatic shut off. You press on the lid and it comes up, and I have you heat your water in it and it shuts off automatically. I have a hard time with Americans because they just don't get it. They hear that roaring and they see it boiling and they rush over there to say, "How do you shut it off? That's boiling, And I have to say, when I first start out, okay, ladies, this is automatic shut off, so don't panic when you hear it going. And but this one is one of the first ones I got. It's Farberware, and I just wanted to show you why I'm changing this. First of all, the tap water puts calcium on it. I switched over to distilled water, and that helped a lot. But over time, I believe might be some kind of vinyl, and over time, this starts to, I don't know, it puts a smell in the water. It just makes it taste bad, and it breaks down, I think. So I am now changing over to this kind here, and I ordered this, and online I looked at it up close, so that the rim here that you pour the water out of does not have any plastic or vinyl or any PVC or anything like that in it. Now, you can leave the lid up if you want to and boil it, but it won't shut off. So you have to watch it. So there is some other material at the top here, but at least you won't be pouring it out. You can lift that up when it goes off automatically, and you can pour it out of this glass piece. So when you're ordering it online, look at it really carefully and see if you're getting those. So I am changing all of mine over, and I'm just so thrilled. And I will put the old ones out on the free table because some people will use them. There's a little more wear in them. Some people will use them for just heating water. Just for, maybe they live in a small place or a little camper, and that will just heat water, and they can use it for other things. So, yes. And so today, before I get started, and we want to detox ourselves from the world and from the politics, but I do have a political statement that I want to make. So I'll just make this to start out with, and then I'll go through and do an etiquette class and repent of it later. So here it is. Okay, ready? I know this is controversial, but I am 100% in support of mandatory vacations for everyone and booster vacations for every 4 months. Okay, so now I've made that statement, and I hope I get a good review for that. And so I'm going to now read, just looking over my notes here. I'm going to read from this book, the Standard Book of Etiquette by Lillian Watson from 1948. And I think you'll be quite interested in what it says. And because we need etiquette people for every era we live in, because the industry changes, life changes, and things around us change, and we would need protocol for different things, and every era would need something, but it all has the same standard, and that is to be courteous, to be polite. And the Bible does say, be courteous one to another. So, and I have had people say, well, you don't have to take etiquette classes, it's not in the Bible. Well, it is. But etiquette was a French word, I believe. Those of you who are French can tell me. I think that it meant a ticket or it was an admission to a certain place, and it was only given to people that passed muster, that were polite enough to be invited. So you want to have etiquette so that you will be welcome. So, tact. Tact is an important part of the pattern. Now I've given you another title if you want to write a little book called The Art of Tact, because it is a forgotten concept, and you might want to look that word up, tact, because it is a way of saying something without being so pointed and so blunt that it hurts somebody's feelings. So, and I'm afraid when we're younger, we don't know this. But now we want to be careful not to be so overly tactful that we're blinded by things that are wrong that need to be corrected. So, but we need to be careful with it. So here, let me read it to you. Tact is a generous courtesy born of kindness. If an ambitious friend asks you how you like her voice, and you tell her it's raspy and harsh, that's unkind. If you tell her it's beautiful when it's not, that's neither sincere nor helpful. But if you tell her you like the lovely, soft quality of her voice, or the clear way she pronounces every word, or whatever you can find to admire with honesty and enthusiasm, that's tact. I suppose if you were a voice teacher or music teacher, you could be a little more blunt. Another example of tactful courtesy is to refrain from correcting a friend's misuse or mispronunciation of a word in the presence of others. That is aggravating, isn't it? According to Matthew 18, you're supposed to go to the person themselves alone. And I can see why God put that in there, because it's very, very unpleasant for everyone involved and embarrassing when you get corrected in front of someone. They should always take you aside. I can see advantages to, in some instances, correcting someone in front of other people just so that your words won't be misconstrued. But here it is. And I really like this because this is a modern problem. People who contradict and correct constantly, every single thing they hear, every single thing someone says, they just automatically say something like, no, it's not, or just constant. It's just constant. It gets wearing on people. Refrain from correcting a friend's misuse or mispronunciation of a word in the presence of others. If he says integrate when he meant correlate, let it go. If you correct him publicly, you draw attention to his mistake and embarrass him. And what's more, you make it appear to others as though you are trying to show off your own superior knowledge. So make it a point never to correct anyone except in private, and then only if you can do so without giving offense. So important. However, I have noticed in today's climate that people just really don't understand offense. You think, oh, they don't care whether they offend somebody. They actually don't know what offends people. So you almost have to have a class in tact, or a little school, a tact school, a tactful school, where you train people about being tactful. We are going to need this now that when we win the war, the way we do business is going to change. And we will have to learn tactfulness, because right now what we have, and I said I wouldn't talk about the politics anymore, but right now what we have is a dictatorship going on in the businesses. They order you about their sharp, snappy, hasty replies. You feel like you're being monitored by a bunch of military people, and this is just the commercial world. And we are going to need a change, because once people get their freedom, they are going to make the choice not to shop at those places where they were mistreated. And we will need to be, if you're a proprietor, you need to learn tact, and you need to train your employees about tact. And every so often in the world, I would say 50 years or so, the way people do business does go through a change. And tact is going to be an important part of the pattern. So, and I'm quite enthusiastic about what it says here, because is so applicable to today. The same, every generation has to learn the same things. We all suffer from the same mistakes and problems as the people of the very first, the people that were first invented. So we all have the same problem. And every generation, every person has to learn all these things. So tact is one of them. So, so make it a point never to correct anyone except in private. Don't invite someone to a dinner party in the presence of others who are not to be included. Oh my goodness. Have you had that experience where someone just leans across you and asks the other person, oh, do you want to come with me? And we'll go out here and we'll go out here, we'll do that. And then they're leaving everybody out. We know they're good friends, but over the years, I think people have just learned to accept that some people are just going to be rude. We get tired of thinking we have to correct them. We just let it go. And that's good because it can start awful arguments. But we really need a school intact. And and I often thought that Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, which is the study of human behavior from a spiritual viewpoint, would be a great 4-year college course because you could spend a whole year on one part of Proverbs, and you can divide it into 4 sections and learn about the study of human behavior and improve yourself as it goes on. And so, wait until you can take him aside and then invite him without the others overhearing. If someone, that's another thing too, is offering people things. We have an old truck in our backyard. Would you like to come and look at it? Maybe you could use it, and saying it in front of everybody else. You got to be very, very. It's not a secret, and you don't have anything to hide, but it's private. We also need to learn the art of privacy. Hey, there's another title for you. Look at all these good titles I'm giving you and all the books that are going to come out of this. If someone starts telling a story you've heard before, if someone starts telling a story you've heard before, let him tell it. It's more tactful to listen and laugh than to spoil the fun for others. Well, I have heard stories over and over, and what I do is if everyone else is content and they're enjoying the story and stuff, I get up and go refill the tea kettle. And I bring it out and look to see if their cup is empty. And I find something to do so that I'm not too dulled by having to listen to the same things over and over. And there's another problem here too, is that if you hear someone, let's say someone that wants to tell you something, and they tell you an example or a little story that goes with it, like one time this and this, and you have a point to it because you want to tell an anecdote that goes with it or something. You're using it as an illustration. And then later on, another subject comes up and you say, well, I will just use that same story and tell you how you can use it in this different way. Don't say to them, well, you already told me that. Hear them out, because they might be using the same illustration for a different reason. Now, there are some people, I don't know where this is coming from, but it seems to have come from, I would say, the 1990s, late 1990s, who will not listen to something they've already heard. And which is a pity, because sometimes you can get a little bit more out of it, or notice that you missed something the first time. And I have even heard kids say they already heard the creation story, so they don't want to hear that one again, because these things, your mind grows and changes, and you hear things and see things in a different way. So don't ever say, yeah, you told me about that, because it's very rude. And if you do get a troublesome person that's always telling the same thing and everything, you can always work around it. Don't make fun of people. Don't ridicule their opinions and ideas or the way they live. Don't gossip, spread false rumors, make damaging remarks. These are all part of the general pattern for politeness. Now, this applies to people online too. And there are some people that can dig out some offense out of everything that you write, everything that you teach, everything that you publish online. There was even a lady I knew that had a beautiful scrapbook making blog, and she had videos too, and she would just buy new materials and show how to put them together and everything. And there were people that would be offended by it and say that she was conceited, or say that she thought she was better than others, or say that she was showing off or something like that. That is in itself very rude, because what they're doing is they're transferring the guilt of their criticism to the other person who's totally innocent. They're transferring their own critical guilt. So when in doubt, always remember that whatever is more thoughtful and considerate of others is the polite thing to do. You always can get these people whose thinking is so skewed and so messed up that they will think that being mean and rude is the best thing for them. But that's not what this is talking about. It's talking about being gentle and being kind. And there are always people that will say, well, the kindest thing I can do is to tell them the truth. And then they will be very hurtful in their remarks. Now, ladies, I hope that you have learned something from that, and that's part of your education. And I'm going to move on to some more education here. One thing that I want to talk about today is having some detox from the world, and that also will lessen L-E-S-S-E-N, the anxiety in your life. And so I want to just list some things that will help lessen anxiety. But if you come to my classes when I have them on here, and you listen and you do the assignments, you will find your anxiety decreasing a little bit, because when we are busy and when our hands are busy, they engage the mind. So if you have something that you love to do, something that you'd like to do, or deliberately give yourself an assignment to learn to do something with your hands, even if it's just cleaning out a drawer or learning to knit or learning to make a card. I knew a lady who was a nurse during the day, and her job was so intense that on the way home she would stop at the craft store and pick up enough materials to make one card. That's all. She did not, buy a bulk full of stuff. She would just buy a card in an envelope and some stickers, by the sticker, and maybe one little embellishing thing and maybe something else. And that's all she did. And she would go home and make a card. And when she lost interest in that, then she would also stop again sometime and buy another. So find something. Now this catalog that I showed you was very interesting, because they sell little kits where if you don't want to get the rubber stamps and make your own cards, you can get this kit, and it has an envelope in it and all the stuff in it, and then it has pictures of suggestions of how you could use it. Just get yourself one kit, and or do one thing, or assign yourself to a reading assignment, one paragraph, and to read aloud, just to read aloud to yourself every day. That would be one of my remedies to detox yourself from the anxiety of the world. And the other is to go on the videos that you can find online and look for anyone who's teaching about something called the vagus nerve, where that has that if it gets pinched creates anxiety. So and then the breathing exercises, which can be delightful. But if you're going to try breathing exercises, that's where you breathe like a baby and your tummy fills up. And what a difference that makes than the tense, tight breathing that's shallow, that's in the upper chest. That you should also accompany your breathing exercises with wonderful, beautiful thoughts. Otherwise, it's just exercise and it's very mechanical. So you should try to improve your spiritual side at the same time by thinking beautiful, truthful, good thoughts. The other thing is pay attention. And besides these breathing exercises, don't forget the little chair, sitting in a chair exercises and stretching. If you're not used to exercise, that's just the ideal thing. And then pay attention to digestion and elimination. You'll notice that when little children become upset and anxious and everything, it has something to do with their digestion or their elimination. And so you need to get that really healthy and look to natural ways to do this. And, I already discussed. I already discussed a few things before about this, and I have found that in summer, regarding nutrition, the salads are the absolute best. They keep you so healthy, and they solve the digestion and elimination. And the little household hint, the little cooking hint that I'm going to give to you today, is a salad dressing that is so delicious and so easy. You need sea salt and avocado oil, and you just swirl a little avocado oil and sprinkle sea salt over your salad. It is absolutely wonderful. You could use the pink Himalayan salt or the brand called Real Salt that is a mixture. It has a lot of minerals in it. But I use the sea salt and avocado oil on a salad. It's absolutely delightful. And makes you feel alive while you're eating it. You feel good while you're eating it. It doesn't take hours for it to kick in, like a pill. It takes just a few minutes. And part of your digestion is your chewing. Part of it is the smelling too, and the preparation of the food. That all it adds to the process of digestion. So. And when you eat, accompany that with good thoughts too. I remember in the olden days down on the farm in Kansas with my husband's relatives that we would go there in the summer and they would serve us things from the garden, and they would say, well, it seems like the corn is better this year than it was last year. And they'd be discussing the food. It was a big deal to them. That food was almost sacred, and their meals were sacred. The food meant a lot to them. They'd worked hard for it, and they took note of how well the crops were, and it was very important to them. So make sure that while you are serving good food to your family, if it works out, teach your children about nutrition while they're eating. Teach them learn what's in them, learn what nutrients are in this food. So those are just a few suggestions on how to curb the anxiety, take a couple of hours off from it, and go for a walk. I would say a stroll. You go for a walk, it ends up being exercise. If you say I'm going for a stroll, it's just as beneficial and doesn't carry with it the connotation of this stiff, obligatory exercise walk. So we need to learn to abound and to be strong and healthy and have an absorbing interest in something that you can find refuge in. And it doesn't have to be the same thing all the time. You can learn new things. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the ancient Roman army while we're talking about anxiety and distress. This came up when I started watching videos on YouTube and other places of the history of the Roman army and some of their protocols, some of their habits, and why they did certain things. And I ran across one. We had been in the ladies' Bible fellowship one week when we had it here, and ran across something about a Roman soldier, a Roman army, and so we thought I'll just look that up, and I showed it to them on the screen, and there were a couple of videos that were available that showed how every day they marched a long ways away from their last place where they camped. And so the terrain would be different, the weather would be different, the scenery would be different, the whole atmosphere would be different. But, and of course, the battles would be most unpleasant, and the march itself would have been unpleasant. But when they camped, they did the same pattern every single night. No matter what the stress of the day had been, every single night, that camp was laid out in rows like a little town, with the captains in a certain place, and the soldiers in another place, and then the mess hall in a different place, and then the fire would be somewhere else. But it was every single time. They knew for a certainty this is one thing that they could depend on would be exactly the same. And then there were rules for when they retired. They were not to bring battle into the talk, the subject, or anything. They had to play games. They had to eat a very fine, high quality meal, and they had to have rest. And so they didn't live a rowdy life after retirement, after they retired at night. And I think that it was so good to learn this because it was something they could depend on. So every day, I think you should have something you can depend on, because we're in a war. Every day, you sit down and you do something that you can depend on. And that's why I have, I try to do some exercises, and I don't want to call them exercises anymore. They're happiness moves. and other kinds of routine things that give you a feeling of stability. We've often wondered about these people that are they'll get under some kind of stress and they'll go wash their hands. And we think they're a little bit crazy, but what they're trying to do is have something that they know how to do, that they can rely on, that's normal, even though it seems abnormal. Or we need to always have something just like that camp, bedtime routines, an evening at home that is going to be the same. And it's going to be very similar, but not boring, but very reassuring and dependable. The same thing. The routine, the ritual that you have at night, closing the curtains, turning down the bed, bathing. You remember in the olden days where getting ready for bed was an absolute ritual. The bath, the clean sleeping clothes, the routine, getting in between the clean sheets and blankets, the reading material, whatever you did, it was something, and it's evolved into this horrible mess where people just crash at night. And I'm sometimes blame the university lifestyle, the college lifestyle, where everybody's cramming and making studying a priority, and the health is left behind, and they'll just go until they can't stay awake anymore. And that's not the way it used to be. And I told you before in a previous video how people used to go for walks at night. It was when I was reading the Jane Austen diet book, and how this was a ritual in normal life, but it got absorbed in the fast pace of life, and so people weren't doing it anymore. But if you want to go and study the ancient Roman army and their camps at night, it was kind of even reassuring to hear about it, because they forgot the war, they forgot the battle before they went to sleep, and that whole ritual, because they knew that they had to be built up in their body and in their mind. Otherwise, they couldn't be good soldiers. And the Bible refers to us as good soldiers. And so in order to understand that, you're going to have to study a little bit about military and soldiering. And it can be quite interesting because you are the captain of your army at home, and you have to keep them positive. So go on a 2-hour detox every day if you possibly can. And I'm going to read to you out of Beautiful Girlhood, and this is a revision by Karen Andriola, and this was the homeschoolers loved this. The homeschool girls loved this, but it's good for boys too, some of it. And it was written by, I believe, it doesn't say who the original person that wrote it, but I believe her name was it Margaret Hale, something like that. Um, but it's all about being ladylike, and but it's still enjoying your girlhood. So girls, if you want to listen to this, oh, it's good. This one's a good one for boys too. It's Making Friends of Books. It is books that teach us to refine our pleasures when young and to recall them with satisfaction when we're old. Now, of course, I'd like to qualify this. Books began to be corrupt everywhere you turn around, starting in the 1950s, late 1950s. More and more really corrupt books, and they would fool you, because start out with a beautiful story, and you'd think, well, I'd like to read, and in your childhood the books were good, and maybe as you were teenagers you read pretty good books, but so you thought, well, I like to read and it's good to read, and you pick up a book. It seemed to be okay, and it would take you on this long journey, wondering what was going to happen. In the end, it began to be so corrupt that you wished you'd never had it. So I just wanted to qualify that. You can teach a child to read, but you have to teach them what to read. And so be careful if you have anxiety, what you read. Very important not to just read, but to have something worthwhile that builds you up to read. So I would say that this is probably a good chapter for boys and for girls. So, who would not count it an honor to have her among her friends the wisest, noblest, and best of earth, and have their friendship so intimate that at any time they might go to them and converse with them? If only one such friend were yours or mine, should we not feel honored indeed, and would we not cultivate that friendship, that if possible our lives might be brightened by the association? I am certain that each one of us would feel just as an interest in so-called friendship. Would you be surprised if I should tell you that such a friendship is possible, not only with one or two superior persons, but with all the wisest and best of time? That is the fact and the case. We are all provided with means by which we may become acquainted with those who have moved earth's masses most, whose lives have influenced most people for good, knowing the very motives and desires of their hearts, and learning exactly what their opinions were or are. The medium for all this wonderful knowledge is the printed page. Though through books we may very intimately know the wisest and the best, I may take a book and go into the quietness of my room, and there read, as a great personal letter, what the author has to say, and there compare his views with those of others and with my own, gathering wisdom for my personal store. What a privilege this is! Of course, the original book was written in the 1800s, and the author was referring to the books of that time, although there were some bad ones in those days too. With all these wonderful book friends, we can understand what Jonathan Swift meant when he said, "A wise man is never less alone than when he is alone." Remember Hyacinth quoted that when she was talking to Molly, "Never less alone than when alone," in Wives and Daughters. Jonathan Swift said, "A wise man is never less alone than when he is alone." That's an enigma, isn't it? So, it is said that a person becomes like his friends, This is a very truthful saying, for association makes a great difference in the life of anyone. Especially is this true of the young. Boys or girls in their teens will almost certainly exemplify those with whom they most associate, especially if they have chosen their associates. We naturally seek out and enjoy those who are congenial to us, passing by those whose taste and manners are offensive. It is not only for the personal touch that this likeness, but the exchange of ideas. By the interchange of thought and expression, it all becomes to great extent one, each giving to the other something of himself and receiving to himself of the other. And it goes on to say that we want to have books that are useful to us. I'll read more to you about this later, but it was talking about how we need to choose books that are useful to us and helpful, very helpful. And just like a friend, we want to be helpful, and we want to have friends that are helpful to us too, that bring out the best in us, So, going along with that, Grammar and Composition 1 by A. Becca, and it has recognizing helping verbs. So, I want to talk to you about helping verbs, and what a helping verb is. Well, you know what a verb is, don't you? It's an action word. So, obey is an action word. So, let me read you a sentence so you can see what the helping verb is. Christians must obey God's word. Okay? The verb must helps the main verb obey to show action. So it was a helper. So here's another one. Discouragement does not come from God. So the word not is an interrupter. So quite often a verb phrase is interrupted by other words. So the word not is a common interrupter. Now, I had never heard of an interrupter. This is one of the old school books my children had when I was homeschooling them. But I didn't actually read every word of them. They would take a page and just work on it and enjoy it so much. You don't have to worry about shoving education down your kid's throat when you have these good books. It's not a poor education when you have the Christian school books. So let me read to you more about a helping verb. I just think being a helper is so nice. It must be nice to be a helping verb. And I talked about in that book, Beautiful Girlhood, making friends of books and books that are helpful. The cowboy could easily be one of the most misrepresented figures in history. Underline the verb phrases and the helping verbs. The cotton gin was invented by Eli Whitney, and the horse-drawn reaper was invented by Cyrus McCormick. Tractors had almost replaced draft animals by 1930. The following innovations were used by the prairie farmer: barbed wire, the steel-tipped plow, and the windmill. Now, what's really interesting about a grammar and composition book like this, that has a Christian base, Christian viewpoint, is that it puts information in there that exercises the heart. And this one here, or the intellect, it mentions the innovations used by the prairie farmer: the barbed wire, the steer-tipped plow, and the windmill. Well, the child would usually try to find out what those were. Try to look it up in some other book you had. And so I think it's really important. But one of the reasons I wanted to go into helping verbs is because I found this wonderful paragraph that I have loved for so many years, and I have put it on my blog back before I used to do videos. And it says, underline the verb phrases in the following paragraph. Now, I'm not going to tell you what they are, but I want to read it to you, and then I want to read verb phrases and just show you what kind of sentences they use. Because you could say, the quick red fox jumped over the little red dog, and have absolutely no Nothing for the heart, nothing for the intellect, nothing. Is just a stupid little sentence, and you want everybody to find all these verbs, and it's fun for a little while, but it's got to have some depth and some meaning, and cultivate the child's character. And that's why I love it so much that even now, as an elderly person, I go back through it and read some of it because I wished I had had it. You know, many of us went to public school, and when we started to homeschool our kids, we started to feel left out, you know. It's like, oh, if I'd have had all this, I'd have been so much further ahead in my life and in my character. So, and maybe not made so many colossal mistakes. Oh, dear. All right, are you ready? We should always be cheerful. The times may be difficult, but a sad and gloomy countenance will not make them any easier. The flower is made by the sunshine, it is not made by the clouds. Our hearts can be filled with warmth from the good things around us. We may have troubles, but we should not allow discouragement. No one can be completely free from problems. We should extract courage and fortitude from them. We should look on the bright side of everything, and we can receive the maximum happiness from each day. That would be so beautiful in handwriting. Wouldn't that be nice to, as one of my students, you write that in your best handwriting on the most beautiful piece of parchment paper you can find and stick it in a frame or put it on your fridge and say it every day. So let's talk about verbs again. And there's action words, linking verbs, and I want to read the sentences to prove to you how superior a Christian education is. And you can get these. These are Christian school books that they use in the Christian schools, but you can use them for home school. You don't have to spend the money on a Christian school because your own home, that's your private school. And look at this. Isn't this neat? I will guide thee with mine eye. Will guide is an action word. But what are they reading at the same time? They're being taught, and in more ways than just looking for action words. They are being taught principles. So, a wise man will increase learning. Will increase is action. Now, isn't that wonderful? A wise man will increase learning. Okay, I would probably look that up. I believe that is in Proverbs. A wise man will increase learning, but a foolish one understandeth it not, something like that. I'd look that up, and we would ponder on it. We would find out, well, what would you do to increase learning? But is it learning anything, or is it learning something that is helpful? And we would look that up. So anyway, this is A. Becca's Teacher's Edition, Grammar and Composition. I ordered the Teacher's Edition and the regular children's textbook, and then I give them both of them because I said you can just read them both. It's not a big secret. I'm not trying to test you. You just read about it in the teacher's manual if you want to and get your answers. At least something will go into your mind and some truth will come to you. There are some things in here that are not sound. Like they'll have something in here that maybe a sentence that I don't agree with, but for the most part, it's still better than anything I have ever seen. Like here's using verb tenses. What's a verb tense? The tense of a verb indicates the time expressed by the verb. Tense means time. A verb tells when things happen, past, present, or future. A verb changes form to express 6 different tenses. The present tense is I see, he sees. Past tense, I saw. Future tense, I shall or will see. Present perfect tense, I have seen. He has seen. Past perfect tense, I had seen. Future perfect tense, I shall or will have seen. So now in the blank, write the form of the verb indicated in parentheses. Now don't get bored because these sentences is what I like the best. I don't really care if they are past tense, perfect tense, or future tense. I like the sentences. They are so beautiful. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. present of stand. He gave them their request, but sent leanness into their soul, the past of sin. I just love the sentences. I just thought the sentences were just miraculously wonderful help for the parent, for their children's hearts. We have so much responsibility when raising our children and teaching them at home that these books were a tremendous friend, a tremendous help. And just like helping verbs, I thought that these books were so helpful because they helped me teach my children when I had no experience in teaching children, no experience in teaching my own children the good values of life. And then later on, my opinion was, and later on, if they forgot some of these things, at least I had taken the responsibility and done the sacrifice to teach them, and one day it'd never leave them. The Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. Now, see, we would look these up and see, what was that talking about? What was the context of that? So then it would take us back to the Bible. And, it was hard at first, thinking, oh, we'll have to have a certain amount for Bible study or Bible reading. But when we got into the composition and grammar, and saw context, like there'd be a reason to go look up something, and it would bring it to light. I have refrained my feet from every evil way, that I might keep thy word. So you see, it's just wonderful. And there are some things about that I didn't quite agree with, that were not sound, but still, it wasn't harmful. It wasn't harmful to the soul. So I wanted to make sure that you knew about that. And I have a couple of other things I'd like to talk about. And I also heard something the other day from some parents who were upset with the schools for teaching things that were against their values. In the first place, you don't have to worry about that if you're homeschooling, because you are the school board, and you are the principal, and you're the teachers, and you can determine what the curriculum is. And I would say, don't force curriculum or any kind of set of books and stuff on your children. Make sure you keep an eye on how they're responding and what brings out the best in them. And don't be a stickler for, oh, you have to do this book here, because you want to do what's the most delightful and what brings out the best in your children. And you would like for them to turn out suffering from unbearable happiness someday. So I wanted to read a little bit of In the Garden with Jane Austen. And this is by Celia Simpson. Oh, no, it's by Kim Wilson. Sorry. So I'll read this paragraph about the garden. And Jane and her mother and her sister enthusiastically set about improving their little domain. I believe that this was when they moved into a cottage. They planted the garden with vegetables and their favorite garden fruits: peas, tomatoes, potatoes, gooseberries, currants, and strawberries among them. When the gooseberries are ripe, I shall sit upon my bench and eat them and think of you, wrote Mrs. Austen to a granddaughter. They had fruit trees in the orchard, and trained against the garden walls, including plums and at least one apricot tree. And Cassandra tried her hand at mulberry trees. I will not say that your mulberry trees are dead, Jane wrote to her, but I am afraid they are not alive. Much of what the Austens ate came from the garden and orchard. The many years living in Steventon, the parsonage where Jane and Cassandra grew up, had given them expertise in farming matters. They raised turkeys and chickens. The chickens are all alive and fit for the table, but we saved them for something grand. So I wanted to read that because it was a little bit of humor. And also I had one other thing, Tea with Jane Austen, also by Kim Wilson. And there are several books called Tea with Jane Austen. I have them. I have those. I have them all. and they're not all colorful. So the one I'm reading has the brightest colored pictures in it, and it was. So let me read this to you. Jane Austen loved tea. She mentions tea so often in her novels and in her letters that I began to suspect she was a true tea enthusiast. Sure enough, there, in one of her letters to her sister, are the telltale signs. Let me know when you begin the new tea, she writes. I am still a cat if I see a mouse. Proof enough, Jane was an avid tea lover, ready to pounce on a really good cup of tea. At the center of almost every social situation in her novels, one finds tea. In Emma, does Miss Bates drink coffee? Of course not. No coffee, I thank you. For me, never take coffee. A little tea, if you please. In Sense and Sensibility, what everyone is drinking when Eleanor notices Edward's mysterious ring set in the lock of hair? Tea, of course. And in Pride and Prejudice, what is one of the most supreme honors Mr. Collins can envision Lady Catherine bestowing on Elizabeth Bennet and her friends? Why, drinking tea with her, naturally. So, ladies, I hope you've enjoyed this day and this hour of detox, and that you'll practice detox from the world's narrative every day and get away from it, and you'll do some of the things. You might want to replay this and just take a notebook and go back and try to list some of the things I've mentioned that will help alleviate the anxiety that the world is pushing on us. And let's just be our own independent consultants and consult with ourselves and say whether or not we want to accept it all. So, ladies, I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you for your love and care for me. And I did buy a chair, and I'll try to remember to put a picture of it in there. It's one of those chairs with a step on it so that I can stand on it and get things from a high cabinet. And I want to show you that. So I will talk to you later. And please, if you want to go over to the post where this video is playing, you can leave a comment there. I don't have any comments on the channel. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.